Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, I am unable to be with you this morning, but yet I am with you this morning. And I'm going to run you through the notes through Schoology here. And as I am running you through the notes, I need you to take notes. So imagine that I am standing in front of the classroom by the smartboard, and you are sitting at the giant table in front of the smartboard. I would need you to have your pencil, a piece of notebook paper, or your notes ready to go so that you can take notes on 9.2 perpendicular lines and vertical angles. I know we've already done 9.2, but we are doing a second part to 9.2. So right now, if you are not ready to go, you're going to hit the pause button and you're going to get your notes and a pencil ready to go, and you are going to take notes on this lesson while having your headphones plugged in and watching your iPad screen. So again, you have the pause button. Please hit the pause button anytime I'm going too fast and you need me to stop so that you can finish taking the notes. Again, everything on this video needs to go into your notebooks, and I will be checking on Tuesday, the next time I see you, to be sure that your notes are done. Consider this an assignment. So again, use the pause button when you need to. Here we go. I am going to just move down as I need to move down. You have 9.2 perpendicular lines and vertical angles for your title, and then you have the I can statement as I can identify perpendicular lines, vertical angles, and their special properties. Voila, looks very familiar. First thing we're going to do is talk about vocab. So main idea number one is going to deal with vocab, and our first word are perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines. Two, count them, one, two, intersecting lines. You should remember that word from our previous set of notes on 9.2. So two intersecting lines that form 90-degree angles at each vertex of the intersecting lines. Little typo here, I'm sorry. Two intersecting lines that form 90-degree angles at each vertex of the intersecting lines. Ignore the word all there. I'm very sorry. Let me just do this and say, don't mess with me. Okay. Again, pause if you need to. I'm moving on to the second word, vertical angles. You kind of already know about vertical angles. We just never name them. You know that when you have intersecting lines, opposite angles are congruent. Well, we actually have a name for them. I didn't give you the name on Wednesday when we did the notes, but the names of those opposite angles of intersecting lines are called vertical angles. So, vertical angle would be opposite angles of intersecting lines, and vertical angles, you guys, are always congruent. And I'll talk more about vertical angles down here in the examples, so you'll see, but you actually already know this. You just didn't know that opposite angles of intersecting lines were called vertical angles. Again, I'm moving on to perpendicular lines for main idea number two. You will have paused probably, or you need to pause if you haven't, and finish the vocabulary up here. And then you guys need to make sure you're writing a question. And again, you're turning in your notes on Tuesday, the next time I see you. And if you don't have everything in the notes that I'm giving you, and if you don't have a question written, one that either you have, one that maybe a classmate might ask, or one that a fifth grader might ask, you are not going to get credit for being done with this assignment. Homework pass, all that stuff is going to apply. So make sure you're doing these notes as you normally do. Main idea number two, perpendicular lines. This is an example of perpendicular lines. As you can see from the definition, we have two intersecting lines. So here's one of my lines, the one going up and down. Here's the second one going left and right. They are intersecting. As you can see, they form, and I haven't officially told you this yet, but I'm going to tell you this right now. These intersecting lines form 90-degree angles. So we have a 90-degree angle where you see my cursor now. You have a 90-degree angle where you see my cursor now. You have a 90-degree cursor where you see my angle now. And you have a 90-degree cursor where you see my angle now. From our previous set of notes, you know that every intersection, or when two lines intersect, that all four angles of the intersection point add to 360. 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90 add to 360. So that would be an example of perpendicular lines. I'm going to slide right on down here. You're going to take note number 4 that says opposite angles of perpendicular lines are congruent. So when I'm thinking of opposite angles, I'm looking at this angle right here, and the opposite angle would be the one opposite, or so I'm in the upper left, I go to the lower right. When I look over at the angle where you see the, where I'm drawing the picture, I'm drawing the scribbly markers right now, I'm in the upper right, the opposite angle would be the lower left. So opposite angles of perpendicular lines are congruent, just like with intersecting lines. The big thing here is opposite angles of perpendicular lines, just like all angles on perpendicular lines, form 90 degrees. As it says, the only difference is all angles of perpendicular lines are 90 degrees. Number 5 is just another example of perpendicular lines. You can see that we have, let me just get my cursor back here. You can see that we have, not quite sure what I did there. You can see that we have perpendicular lines. They're not straight up and down. We don't have a vertical and horizontal intersecting. We have one at an angle, we have one at an angle here, and then I drew a little right angle box so that you know that where these two lines connect, this angle is 90 degrees. Therefore, you know that the opposite angle is going to be 90 degrees. And because this is 90 degrees, they have to be perpendicular lines. Therefore, the right and the left are also going to be 90-degree angles. So just a different look at what perpendicular lines look like. Here we have not perpendicular lines, but vertical angles. So vertical angles, like we worked with in our last lesson, if I am looking at this angle right here, I'll call it angle number, if I'm looking at this angle right here and I call it angle number 1, the opposite angle, so I'm on the left here, the opposite angle, the angle over here, I'll call this angle number 3, is congruent. Opposite angles are congruent on intersecting lines. We call these, if I wanted to slide back up, we call these vertical angles. So angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. Just like this angle right here in a perpendicular line is opposite this angle right here with perpendicular lines, those would also be called vertical angles. You just know since they're perpendicular, they equal 90 degrees. Here we have angle 2. Again, the opposite angle for angle 2, we'll call it angle 4, is going to be congruent to angle 2. I did not tell you what any of these angle measurements are. You just know that angle 1 is the same as angle 3, angle 2 is the same as angle 4. Main idea number 3. This is some practice. I'll give you a couple of notes. Note number 1, note number 7. And by the way, if you have not written a question up here, you should have written a question, or you should write a question as we are done with this main idea. I'll go all the way across. So good. Pause me if you need to pause me. I wouldn't be offended. The symbol for perpendicular lines is an upside down T. Next, I am going to give you a little problem, and I'm going to give you some information to go with the problem. The information is line segment AB. Line segment AB. Hold on one second. This is going to be A. This is going to be B. Sorry, I forgot to make these. Therefore, this whole thing right here is line segment AB. Okay, so now we have line segment AB. We have line segment CD. Magical, aren't I? So it says line segment AB is perpendicular upside down T to line segment CD. What that tells us is, or first what it's asking us to do is give the measure of each angle and explain why you gave each measure. This is a really easy one. Because you know that AB is perpendicular to CD, we know that every single angle is 90 degrees. Therefore, angle 1 is 90 degrees because we have perpendicular lines. Angle 2 is 90 degrees because we have perpendicular lines. Angle 3 is 90 degrees because of perpendicular lines, and angle 4 is 90 degrees because of perpendicular lines. You also know, even though it really doesn't matter, you also know that this angle right here, angle 1, is going to be congruent to angle 4 because they're vertical angles, because they're opposite each other. These are still intersecting lines, but they just happen to be intersecting lines that are perpendicular. So a whole bunch of reasons about why the angle measurements are what they are. One more note for you to take as we move down to number 9 is this problem, number 9. Here you go. Again, excuse my really crude writing here, but I am using just a mouse to make these letters and angle measures. Here's what we got. Segment GH, so right here, follow the cursor. And segment JR, right here, follow the cursor, are intersecting angles. Angle 1, I told you, is 60 degrees. I would like you to tell me the measure of each angle and explain why you gave each measure. Now would be a great time to pause and see if you can do this. So hit pause and tell me what the measure of angle 3, 2, and 4 are, and tell me why they are what they are. Come back, listen to the rest of the video. So again, I would hit pause right now and see if you can figure out, come back and I'll give you the answer. So here is the answer. If you haven't paused, pause. If you have paused, here you go. I know angle 1 is 60 degrees because it tells me right here, angle 1 is 60 degrees. I know that if angle 1 is 60 degrees, angle 3 has to be the exact same measurement because we have intersecting lines and opposite angles. Angle 1 is opposite angle 3. Opposite angles are congruent. Opposite angles that are congruent are called, let me go all the way back up here, vertical angles. So you know angle 1 and angle 3 are both going to be 60 degrees because I already gave you the measurement for angle 1. Okay, angle 3 is going to be the same. Now go back to our other set of notes, or think back to our other set of notes, and we said that all 4 of these angles have to add up to 360 degrees. So if we take 360 and we subtract the 2 angles that we know, which are 60 degrees for 1 and 60 degrees for 3, we're going to be subtracting what 60 and 60 are together, which is 120. Again, sorry for my writing. I'm using a mouse here, as you can probably the clicking is driving you crazy. Do my math. I get 240 degrees left over to split between my unknown angles. And I know 1 is 60, I know 3 is angle. I don't know 2 and I don't know 4, but I know that they're the same because they're vertical angles. They're opposite angles, and opposite angles are congruent. I probably said that like 25 times now, so hopefully you understand that that's really important. So if I take 240 degrees and I apply it to angle 2 and angle 4, I know that I can't apply 240 to both of them, otherwise I'm going to have way too big of a number that is above 360. So I take 240 and I cut it in half. I know that angle 2 is 120 and angle 4 are 120. They're going to be the exact same measurement because A, they're vertical, and B, I took what was left and divided it between the last 2 angles. That is what you need to know for today. After all is said and done, you should be able to identify perpendicular lines, vertical angles, and their special properties. You should have a question for your vocab. You should have a question after you view the perpendicular lines. And then you should also have a question. I don't know why this is getting smaller on me. You should also have a question for number 3, the practice and what we did here. Again, one more time, you will be turning all of this in to me on Tuesday, so make sure the notes are done, make sure your questions are complete. Watch this video as many times as you'd like. Hope you have a wonderful day, and the rest of what you need to do for the day will be explained to you either by your teachers or through Schoology. Good luck with your day. See you all after lunch.